Well, welcome back, everyone, to a new season of Mintel's Little Conversation. We've got a really great lineup for you in the weeks ahead, so stay tuned. But as you know, Mintel's Little Conversations are all about real conversation with actionable insights into what consumers want and why. I'm Lynn Dornblaser. I'm Principal Consultant at Mintel. And today I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Kaitlin Ceckowski, she's an Associate Principal Consultant, and Nicole Bond, Associate Director, Marketing Strategy at Compare Media. So there are a lot of major sporting events out there, but we just lived through the Super Bowl. So I know the two of you have a lot to talk about what we saw, what we didn't see, and how important some of those ads were or were not.
Absolutely. And I think before we get into the ads of it all, Kaitlin and I want to talk about why the Super Bowl is such a different moment when it comes to sports marketing. It lives in a lane of its own. And we're going to see some other big events throughout this year, World Cup, Olympics, that are all going to shape up a different opportunity for marketers. The Super Bowl is the only event with global pull that brings people who are going to watch the sport, passionate fans, people who are there for the social event of it all, people like us who are tuning in for the marketing, and people this year, right, that are joining for the first time because Taylor Swift is there. It is a cultural touchstone in a way that it brings so many people together. And unlike the World Cup and the Olympics, it happens on one night at one time where everyone is locked into their screens together. And that is the biggest separator between how marketers can use this moment to the full-flighted plans they have to put into place for something like the World Cup and the Olympics that happen over a period of time. It's just different. We're all locked in, and that's why us as marketers have to really have an intentional presence when the big game is on the screen.
What are some of those sneak peeks that you feel you observed last night?
Oh, so many. Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones that we both collectively saw and we're very much anticipating was the use of QR codes, right? We've talked about a lot in our trends presentation, this idea of how do we make national TV, OTT, something that is a little bit further down the funnel. It's a little bit more engaging with consumers versus just grabbing awareness. There were definitely brands that played into the QR code of it all. We had TurboTax. That was kind of like scan to do something. We had Apple Music where the timing was fantastic right after the Apple halftime show. And then we had some other activations of that along the way, which I'm sure we'll talk about some here, but the scan to just learn more, which one of our key tenets of using QR codes is scan to do something. No one is really interested in scanning to learn more, especially when they're tuning into like the biggest sporting event of the year.
That is so clever. I remember seeing that thinking, no idea. Absolutely no idea.
And it kind of just catches you off guard, right? And I think that's something that we'll talk about throughout this conversation is the ones that we're going to bring up caught us off guard in one way, shape, or form. And like they're memorable and they are driving that traction with consumers. And I love the Duolingo example. I mean, we talk about their marketing all the time as like just really disrupting the space in a way that is connecting with consumers left and right across so many platforms. And then there's one more that we're going to talk about with Funnel Vision. And it's the flip side of the trend, right? Funnel Vision is all about like engaging with your consumers, finding new ways to do that, finding ways to take online experiences offline and offline experiences online. And the one that I think that like falls flat in this regard is FanDuel's like Kick of Destiny with Rob Gronkowski. I was, as a marketer, so excited for this campaign when it launched last year. And then how fake and short the initial Kick of Destiny was such a letdown and a disappointment. And so when I saw it happening this year, I was like, they've learned. They've listened to all of the social kind of conversations around it, how it just felt so forced and so fake and so inauthentic. They're gonna do it right this year. Like they're gonna do it actually live. It's gonna feel real. It's taking this national TV moment. It's allowing consumers to bet on it. It's bringing them into the conversation. It's recreating how we view a commercial. And it didn't do that. It fell flat to me again. It was short. It tried to be a little bit more real in the surrounding, looking like Vegas. But again, he missed again. Didn't even look like he actually kicked the ball. Like there were just so many things where I'm like, if we're going to do this, not only back-to-back years, we have to make sure that we're considering the consumer perception to it because it's meant to drive engagement. And when it doesn't deliver, that Super Bowl spot doesn't deliver, you get so disappointed at like even remotely being invested in how that storyline plays out.
Yeah, I felt the ads in the weeks up to the Super Bowl for FanDuel promoting all of that were much funnier and much more interesting than the actual thing itself. I thought that was fascinating.
And like, again, the same last year was the same thing. The lead up spots were so high quality, so well done, like bought into this whole idea of like training for this opportunity, like doing this like very specific, unique skill. And again, it doesn't finish, which is just disappointing.
Yeah.
So
now something else with funnel vision, you tell me if this fits, but one of the things that I really noticed that really stood out to me was how many movie trailers weren't actual movie trailers. It was just a little bit, and then it said, essentially go to the website to watch the whole thing, go online to watch the whole thing. Does that fit into this trend as well?
It absolutely does. This is something that Kaitlin and I, we dug into it a little bit when we were chatting offline, and it's just, again, you're disrupting someone's experience. We're here to watch the game. I'm giving you this attention during the commercial span. You have to maximize that, whether you buy 30 seconds, whether you buy 60, or whether you have, a longer spot. You have that attention. You have that window. So now you're telling me that I've seen this 30-second spot and the game is back on, but you want me to go watch the trailer online. It just doesn't connect. Yes. It doesn't maximize on that moment, which is the opposite of making someone's experience like more seamless, as Kaitlin mentioned earlier. And I think like kind of combining and wrapping this whole section up, like how that could have been better is show the 30-second thing and then have your QR code. People know how to scan for a chance to win free tickets or free movie, like at, with AMC or free popcorn at the movie, whatever it is. It's like, give me a reason to scan. Give me a reason to go see your movie that you've just introduced to me as a consumer.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. And one thing I want to say about Google before we move to Dove is that they're making this like their Budweiser Clydesdales of the Super Bowl. Every year they are hitting with a campaign that is so impactful. It's speaking to something that is actually impacting and affecting people's lives. And again, as Kaitlin said, they are integrating it into their products. They're not showing you like all of the features that we see, like when, a random phone is being introduced. It's like real, like nitty gritty things that are important to like someone's quality of life. And like you expect it now, year in and year out. If there's a Google Pixel commercial, it is going to drive home a point that like when you're sitting on your couch watching the game, you're just kind of like, wow, like that's amazing. And so I love to see that kind of becoming their Super Bowl identity. And then speaking of Super Bowl identities, we all know Dove. They have long, been someone that has been advocating for body positivity, body confidence, especially within, with women, which Kaitlin and I talked about this last year. We love when brands take this opportunity to connect with like female audiences. Like it is such a platform to connect. And Dove's message was just like, let's keep like girls involved in sports. Like it's giving you stats that are reminding you like why like women drop out of sports at young age. They tie it back to their core promise of, promoting body positivity. and they're showing you clips that evoke real emotion. It shows you a real issue that you should care about, and that's important to like the lives of young women. And they're again showing how they are making efforts as a company to kind of combat some of these difficulties and these hurdles that like young women are facing specifically within athletics, and encouraging them to keep going. So to me, both of these were really two of the only spots that had this big social responsibility pool in a way that like caught your attention. You understood how the brand was connecting like a problem with a solution. And it really drove impact, during the viewing experience. Oh my gosh, you're so right on that, Kaitlin.
There's something else about the Dove one that there were a couple others that were like this as well, and I can't think of which ones they are right now. But with the Dove ad, when it started, you didn't, I mean, if you know the Dove brand, you could kind of guess where it was going to go, but not entirely, because it was all young girls, like having things go wrong with their sports activities, doing the jump and failing, and all of those things that were sweet and funny and cringy and all of that. And then it felt like it took that and flipped it upside down and showed that the young girl in the bathing suit and started talking about the numbers, and it showed how uncomfortable she was looking at herself in the mirror in the bathing suit. And I felt that there were other ads too that like started out one way and then like turned and became something a little bit different. And to me, that makes the Dove one even more impactful, because you start watching and it's fun and it's like, oh, and then this is what happens, right? So such a great ad.
Something that we've been like talking about a lot in regards to that, Lynn, is this idea that we're seeing a ton across marketing is like connecting and finding ways to embody like human truths. Like that's a big part of, we'll talk about Deja New here in a second, but it's really like, how do we connect with something or portray something that like a ton of consumers can relate to? Like, and the Dove example was so wonderfully executed, because we're watching what feels like home video clips, and whether you've done gymnastics or not, like you can relate to like what you're seeing on the screen. And when you can do that and when you can connect with consumers in that way, it makes the messaging more compelling, more engaging, and it really does bring storytelling into the mix in a way that like you are sitting there watching it, but you're able to resonate with the emotions of everything that they're depicting on the screen. And it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. And I think, we've seen this happen so often where it's like Kaitlin said, like, it doesn't make sense. Why are these brands with these, celebrities? And I do think this year, for the most part, an overwhelming amount of brands got it right in terms of the content that they created correlated to why the celebrity they were using was famous, things that they were known for, unique characteristics about them, and they brought that to life throughout the spot. So like, bravo to brands for the most part, getting a lot better at this. But the Dunkin' one to me is just stellar because it commits to so many bits with Ben Affleck being the center of it. And they commit to Ben Affleck because he is a avid Dunkin' like coffee consumer. He loves Dunkin' Donuts. And like we start to know that like there's memes about it, which is where this even came from in the first place. And in the spot, they not only commit to like his relationship with Jennifer Lopez. They not only commit to his relationship with Matt Damon, they not only commit to like bringing Tom Brady into the spot in a way that like makes sense, but the entire thing is an interweb of inside jokes that connect back to kind of who like Ben Affleck has been for Dunkin' Donuts over like a long period of time. I mean, this spot is a direct continuation of multiple spots they've done throughout the year. Yeah, I also was disappointed. I saw the lead up to DoorDash and I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. You're taking what's happening on the screen and you're making it a part of your spot. And then when it aired, I was similar. I was like, oh, I was like, they're serious. Like, this is the promo code. Like, this isn't like a spoof or a joke. And some of the social listening tools we have, I was like kind of listening. I don't know, what are people saying about all of these spots? And DoorDash was like, is someone going to post the code so we can all copy and paste it? Or like, how are we actually doing it? Yeah, exactly. And I totally agree, Kaitlin. That's such a good, like, nostalgic tactic that could have played out really well in a unique way for a brand whose sole purpose is to connect consumers with the things they need. But, speaking of connections, one of our favorite tenets of Deja New is this idea of bringing back brand figureheads. We loved it with McDonald's, and it's been something that like we've continued to kind of monitor throughout the years. So like big brand mascots, big brand figureheads, bringing out like brand mascots from the past and bringing them back to like conversations today. And there's a couple of, brands that played into this space, but one that I know we're passionate about has been the E-Trade babies. So they bought the E-Trade babies back. This is not the first time they've been back. I'm pretty sure it was either last year or the year before where it was like, oh my gosh, E-Trade babies are back. But the reason I loved it this year and I found the spot so compelling is because, yes, it's taking these nostalgic characters and it's putting it in a conversation in a situation that is so relevant today. Connecting the babies to pickleball, which is like the sport that is blooming across the country, across age demographics, and leaning into like court talk and like smack talk, and then also tying it back to like, I'm more concerned about saving for retirement, back to their products. It's such a perfect example of let's use a brand figurehead, something that like you will all love from the past. It's nostalgic, but like let's make it relevant today. And the way that we do that is like by putting it into like a modern conversation. And it's just so timely, so relevant, and it really does kind of capture so many compelling elements of the story that they've been telling from one Super Bowl to the next.
Mm.
I agree. I totally feel like I can connect with this. I am absolutely a couch potato at like some, times throughout my week, multiple times, if we're being honest. And I think that, one that we've talked about a lot, like with financial services, Kaitlin, is like, you have beloved mascots, you have new mascots, but then there's some brands that don't have a mascot and they don't really want one. It doesn't work for like the products and services that they sell. And one that we have loved in that world is Discover and their use of Jennifer Coolidge. We have really talked a lot about how they are using her and her character that like all of us like know and love her for and everything that she is on screen. And they're bringing it to life in a way that is embodying human truths. And they didn't have a spot during the game. They were maybe a little bit more strategic with their marketing budget, and they kind of sandwiched the game. So they were before kickoff and they were after kickoff with a continuation of this spot, leaning into the human truth of like wanting to like connect with a human when it comes to customer service. And then playing into the idea of like, am I a robot? And then not only did the spot do that, their social media is like so relatable because it's her going through all of the like, I'm not a robot test. And it's like, but there is no picture with a full stop light. It's like, how do I prove that I'm not a robot? And that's like such a great example of like, we don't have a brand mascot. We have a figurehead and like, we love her. We're committing to who she is and like what she means to like society. And then we're going to like tie it back to human truths. How do we use her to show how our products are addressing things that like are so impactful, to consumers everywhere. And I think it's stellar and they're going to continue to do it. And it is something that other financial services brands should definitely be paying attention to.
Hmm. The other ad that I thought when it started was going to be all about AI. You probably know which one I'm talking about. Started out with like images that were really really weird. It was talking about AI generation and all of that, and the camera pulls back, and there are a million little minions sitting at computer terminals. To me, that just totally summed up what so many people think about AI, and then also its minions. So how can that go wrong? But a great, really, a great way to, I thought, to really push that next Despicable Me movie. I thought that was a really clever way, to your point, to be current, talking about AI, and then having it morph into something totally different.
Oh yeah, and one of the ones that kind of Kaitlin and I talked about, and we have mixed opinions on it, but the idea of like using the nature of like the minions as a character, right, and like that brings that spot to life, was the Elf Beauty commercial. I loved it because I was avid. Like I watched seasons 1 through 9 of Suits like throughout the summer. And I was like, I didn't even really expect them to be a part of the Super Bowl. And they showed up in a couple different spots. But I liked the elf of it all because it like leaned into, the different characters and it tied to the products. And so like, I thought that was a good example of like committing to a bit. Like if we're going to go all in on like connecting our products to Suits, we need to make sure that the storyline comes through. And I think that is where Kaitlin feels like it missed a little bit, was that it wasn't long enough, right? That's your perspective?
Yeah. Exactly.
And I think it becomes one of the one of the problems. It's like a blessing and a curse, right? At Super Bowl advertising, and that has to happen so far in advance of like the game. Like you are trying to be, culturally relevant, like in, midsummer Q1, Q2 of 2024 to like deliver a spot almost, 8 to 12 months later. And I think to me, almost like you have to be careful when you're taking these like cultural, like hot stones, which Suits was, right? Like Suits was really, really hot in the summer. So if that spot would have landed, I don't know, like during the MLB season or during the World Series, I feel like it would have had a lot more impact. Whereas now it's like almost something that we're nostalgic for already because like it happened in the summer. That was the moment. And like now I'm like, oh my gosh, I like love these characters. I completely forgot about them. And so I think that is kind of almost a burden sometimes of Super Bowl advertising that like maybe made the elf spot feel not as impactful to some as it could have to others.
Mm-hmm. Were there some cases of celebrities and ads where it didn't make sense? Or where there wasn't that connection between the celebrity and the brand?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, overall to me, the beer brands this year were so lackluster and a lot of them used, corner celebrities. I love that Bud Light continues to use Post Malone because like we talked about, he is an avid user, of that product or he has been in the past. And so that was a good connection. So it makes sense for him to be there. But overall, like Bud Light, even Budweiser with the Clydesdales and Coors Light with like LL Cool J, like they were all just kind of like, I don't know, they just felt meh to me. So I think there were so many good activations of celebrities that those that you thought were going to be really stellar just kind of got lost. Even the Michelob Ultra campaign. I mean, you have the biggest, face of like soccer ever in Lionel Messi, like in your spot. And it didn't deliver to me. It's like, yeah, he's there and he's playing soccer on the beach and you have Ted Lasso, Jason Sudeikis, but it didn't connect to me the same way that like their like Caddyshack spot did last year. So I think across the board, the beer brands were let down for me in that aspect.
Well, I think we should wrap this one up. We've been talking for quite a long time about a lot of different things. So what I want to say to everybody out there, that there is so much to take from this conversation that we've just had. A couple things that I wrote down that are key points to think about is the Super Bowl, unlike the Olympics, unlike World Cup, really stands out as being a little bit different because it's a one-shot deal. It's totally live. It's one thing all at once, and the degree to which companies use that to inform their strategy for the year to come really cannot be overstated at all. Clearly, everybody has their own favorites, and clearly, I think looking at the lineup of the ads and the agreement and the disagreement among the three of us, that there truly is something for everyone, and that kind of is the whole point. But I think the biggest thing that I take away is the importance for every company when considering advertising at the Super Bowl, not at the Super Bowl, is to have as deep a reach as possible across as many touch points as possible as well to really optimize that spend that they are making. So thanks to everyone for listening. But as you know, the conversation doesn't end here. So if you go to Mintel's LinkedIn and Instagram, let us know what you think about it. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode and on any of the other episodes. If you want to know more about Mintel, visit Mintel.com and sign up to become a member of the free Mintel Spotlight community. So make sure you never miss an episode. Subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. Goodbye for now. We'll catch you next time for a new episode of Little Conversation. Thanks a lot.